Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wall Street Hackers, the show on the Pod TV network. One of the most exciting shows that you'll see this week, dealing with, of course, in the investment world, stocks. We'll see the stories of the week, the quote of the week, and, of course, Peter's picks that you just can't miss. So with that, we're going to bring in the hacker himself, the graduate of UCLA, where he received his degree in economics, law degree at the University of Miami, and also his he received his MBA at NYU. Spending 17 years on the streets, he's able to give us some insights of what's going on in Wall Street and the investment world in general. So with that, we're going to bring in the hacker himself, Peter Bennett. Peter, as I say, welcome to your show.
Oh, thanks. It's so helpful. So Nick, I have to cover one thing. I do miss occasionally. I mean, but I have to say, I mean, I know
I'm heavily weighted in your record.
I don't have a whole lot of misses financially, and even in my predictions about politics and things have been pretty good. But that's even harder to predict.
Yeah, Peter, the ones I miss is when I think for myself. If I let you think for me, I do fine.
Oh, there you go.
The stocks I pick are fine. The ones
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's true. You've had a few misses, but most people do. Anyway, and I've had some, but not many. So intro, welcome to the September 14th, 23 Wall Street Hackers. You can catch a new show most weeks on Thursdays and Saturdays. We begin with the markets. So as we've been saying, I mean, I could brag, but I mean, I'm not the only one who predicted this, but I've been saying for months and months and months, maybe a year, that these inflation numbers coming down were really misreads of the fact that energy was coming down. So what happened is energy started coming back up in May, which we were predicting it could go much higher, and it wasn't going to stay low for long. And now what happened? The August numbers came out on CPI yesterday, and they were really not pretty. And they confirm what we've been saying for the whole year. So energy costs are rising since May, and the consumer price indexes are reacting to that as expected, because it's both part of certain indexes and it feeds into others. So the August CPI was up 3.7% year over year, which sounds bad, but for the month, it was up 0.63%, second month in a row of increases. And if you extrapolate that for a year, you're looking at a 7.5% yield, 7.5% in CPI increase. Now, you would think the markets would say, because they're always delusional, of course, this is really bad news. We're wrong. Instead, the market was up yesterday. The market's up today. Nothing's happening. Sooner or later, the markets are going to be slapped in the face. And they're not going up that much in the last year anyway, but they refuse to go down. But sooner or later, this problem of inflation and inflation not being under control is going to catch up to the market. Inflation hurts the economy in so many ways. It hurts consumers who can't spend. It hurts companies who have to refinance. But I think consumer and companies are insulated to a point more than usual, and that would be another whole show. But the point is, Wall Street Hackers likes to look at the causes of things, not the effects. The market likes to look at the effects and not the causes. So what is causing energy to go up so much? Well, one, this is a black swan in the works, because energy companies are investing 40% too little just to maintain production of oil and gas in the long run at the levels it is now. 40% too little. Can you imagine if all of a sudden we woke up one day and there was a 40% shortage in oil and gas? Well, it won't quite be that way, because they'll restart the projects and maybe they'll notice it before we get to that level. But these projects take 5 to 7 years, and the oil and gas companies have been underinvesting by not only 40%, in my opinion, of what they should be doing, but you could see their budgets. It's under 50% of what they did year after year and year in and year out. before 2015. So all of a sudden in 2015, they just dramatically cut their budgets for oil and gas projects, which again take 5 to 7 years. So you don't see the effects immediately, but this is going to catch up. You can't have this be sustainable. So the point is that, one, energy is probably going up, and the reasons are many, but especially governments around the world are discouraging oil and gas production, not only in America, but all over. They have this green energy idea. And I understand why they want to control the climate issues, and they could be serious. You can debate that either side. But the point is, one, they're not doing it at all. They're making the climate worse with their policies. And two, they're causing economic problems that won't help even the situation. And the other thing is, you have 10% of capital budgets of oil and gas companies now going to projects like carbon sequestration. So that 10% is sucked away from regular oil and gas projects. It will help the environment, and great. But the point is, what happens when oil and gas maybe goes much higher, and certainly I doubt will go lower. So that's the number one reason. Number two is the unemployment rate and wages. So the unemployment rate ticked up slightly, but from 50-year record lows. So now it's 3.8%, 8 or 9 million people still, 8 or 9 million jobs unfilled. This is not sustainable either. 3, government deficits. So the 2023 U.S. government deficit for just 11 months is going to be about 1.5 trillion, and that is double the 22 deficit. So the government just keeps spending money, some of it on good projects, a lot of it wasted. But the point is, all that money pouring into the economy is very stimulative to the economy, and it's going to cause inflation, of course. There's an expression, too much money chasing too few goods. And finally, the Fed, who's been behind the curve for a year and a half now. And basically, they're trying to have it both ways. Maybe they're too political. I don't know their reasoning. Maybe they just see it that way. But they have this theory that they don't have to get well above the inflation rate to squelch inflation, which has always been the norm for 70 years. And they want to go less high for longer. So it's high for longer. And basically, they're trying to avoid any pain and instead have inflation go down. But I'm afraid it very well be, nobody knows the answer to this, but it may be pain to the economy that causes inflation to go down. Because I was thinking of it this way: why would anybody change their behaviors? If you get a raise, you get a raise in Social Security, that's almost the same as inflation. If you have access to money, a decent salary, you can get a new job. I don't see where all of a sudden people are going to stop driving or slow down their energy consumption, slow down their travel, slow down their consumption of anything. So it may be impossible to have no pain and a gain in terms of controlling inflation. Nobody knows, but I have a feeling that what I do see is that the market is delusional. Just yesterday's reaction to a really bad CPI report. And the real shock may come, and nobody knows at the Fed's meeting. But if I was the Fed right now, I would raise another 0.25%. Now, the Fed has it, the market has it, the Fed's going to drop rates. Originally in the fall, rates are going to drop in the fall. Now, in next year, they're going to be dropping rates. Well, the Fed, they're not really expecting an increase in rates, but who knows how high the rates have to go. So the point is, it's very dangerous, especially, by the way, in September and October, which are very volatile months. So I'd be very defensive right now and very cautious about what's going to happen. The market sooner or later will be facing reality. Quote of the week. Of course, I always pick quotes generally that agree with my opinion, but again, that doesn't mean they're wrong. So and also I would add that I like to find other evidence, and I've seen a lot of studies, like studies about how long inflation generally lasts and things that just confirm everything we're seeing. So here's an article from Sunday's Barron's magazine, a quote from them. Even with the rise in bond yields, corporate financial officers think it's a good time to borrow. before credit gets still more expensive. As is typical, after issuers and investors returns from their summer holidays, there was a surge in new bond volume this past week. That afforded companies reasonably priced capital, observed Cliff Noreen, head of global investment strategy at MassMutual. So there's 2 points here, but the main point they're saying is, okay, if rates are supposed to go down, why are corporate officers going out and borrowing? At least they're being cautious because they think it could go much higher, or maybe they believe it will go much higher, and they're preparing for this, digging in basically. And 2, the obvious, high rates affect consumers, and that's in their statement, about the fact that consumers can now get reasonable rates on their bonds, but on the other side, it's going to affect the economy sooner or later. So, 5 most interesting stories of the week. This was one we're going to be discussing in our panel discussion, and I try to stay away from politics to a point because I know the audience is probably split, like America and the world. Also, I have issues with both parties. If you look at the actual issues, I have issues with both parties. Probably most people do. Some people might say, "Oh no, I'm pure, Republican or conservative on everything, or Democrat." But most people have mixed opinions, and the truth is in the middle for sure. So the story of the week is going to be about House Speaker Kevin McCarthy ordering an impeachment inquiry into President Biden's alleged involvement in his family's foreign dealings. And we're going to be discussing that and also what the public perceives on that and why. Interesting story number 2. This is interesting. A lithium deposit discovered in a volcanic crater in Nevada and Oregon may hold up to 40 million metric tons of the rare metal lithium, and it may be the largest in the world. It's called the McDermott Caldera, and it may hold up 20 to 40 million metric tons. It would be a great boost for America's production of lithium, especially since China's the major producer of this, and we're trying to switch to EVs. A few points about that. One, though, there's been a lot of political opposition. Indian tribes are pushing against it, and that can slow it down. Production might start in 2026, but this could slow it down a lot. Also, oddly, NASA, the space agency, is opposing it because apparently that area is a railroad valley tabletop that, because of its undisturbed standing, I'm not a scientist, is used to calibrate measurements of hundreds of satellites around the world. So I guess there's something about this area that they don't want chopped up, but we need the lithium. And the last point there is, I've said this before, I've seen studies that if all the cars in the world ran on lithium, there would be only a 10-year supply of lithium. So I'm not sure this makes sense to go to all lithium-powered cars and then, eventually run out of lithium, but at least this helps a bit. So this was good news. Last week, we covered the immigration crisis. There were 2 points there. One is the borders are totally open, as most people agree. But the other point was 38% of Americans didn't even think it was worse, which means they have no idea what's going on, and we discussed the reasons why. That will tie into this week's discussion on what's going on with the president. So, but to confirm what we were saying, this was a pretty well covered story. Mayor Adams, the New York City mayor, said that the migrant crisis will, quote, he said this, will destroy New York City. Now, that's a pretty big comment. And he said he doesn't see a solution, that if it continues, he's never seen a problem like this. Few points there. One, he didn't have a problem until 110,000 people arrived in New York City. He had no problem when Texas was overrun, Arizona, Nevada, with illegal immigrants. But now that they're coming to New York and it's becoming their financial burden, now it's a problem. Second of all, he's trying to politically blame Texas, which is shipping people from the border. These towns are overrun with immigrants for years. And so they're shipping some who are willing to go. But the bulk of the immigrants are not coming from Texas. And other cities around the country, are many of them Democrat, are complaining about the fact that they can't handle the burden. And again, it was a problem down south for years. So I hate the way politics plays into some of these things. Number 3, a robot featuring arms, legs, and 2 eyes and basic facial features, very plain face, but has a head, has joined actual warehouse workers for the first time and is lifting heavy boxes in containers. It's called Apollo. It's 5'8", 160 pounds, and it moves items weighing up to 55 pounds. It comes from a company called Apptronik. It's a tech startup, and it says that it expects one day for its robots to be able to perform menial tasks like household chores. And I could see this coming. I mean, Rosie is coming. And last year, Goldman Sachs published a report which predicted humanoid robots could be, quote, economically viable in factory settings between 2025 and 2028, and in consumer applications between 2030 and 2035. So the robots are coming, and I've feared there's multiple issues for people, but one of them is jobs. And, there's a theory that jobs will be created at the same rate, but I think these robots, it's the first time that technology is actually now physically and mentally capable of totally replacing people in many jobs. So we will see, but it may be a big issue. Finally, and this relates to investing, one concern that many investors might have is that investing in energy is that fossil fuels days are numbered. But ExxonMobil just said global energy demand is expected to rise by 14.4% to 2050. Actual oil demand should grow by 5.7%, even oil demand by 2050, and gas use is supposed to increase by 21.7%. So this is what we've been saying on Wall Street Hackers for a long time. The energy, there's a lot of money to be made in energy because the market thinks, it's going away in 5 or 10 years, but there's a real opportunity. And also in terms of climate change and everything else, I mean, how do you fight the climate if you introduce a solar panel or a solar powered car or whatever, indirectly an EV, but then populations all over the world in less developed countries are adding cars, and they actually want heat for their homes. And so the trends are not positive, and there might be solutions, but the solutions government's using now, especially squelching natural gas, which is the cleanest fuel, and then actually encouraging indirectly oil and coal production because they don't have enough natural gas. It makes no sense at all. And neither does shipping production to China and getting it out of developed countries like the US makes zero sense because China is the biggest polluter in the world in terms of carbon, and they just keep increasing. So you're just shipping the pollution over. It's all political again. I wish politicians would just focus on solutions and not politics, but it's part of politics. Anyway, we'll take a quick advertisement, and then we'll be back with our pick of the week, which happens to be energy, and often is, and our panel discussion. It should be interesting. We'll be back soon. See you soon.
One of the things that business owners forget a lot is to prepare for their own retirement.
Hi, my name's Nick Palavita, and today I'm with a very special guest, a certified financial planner, a chartered retirement plan specialist, and president of National Pension Partners, Max Couliet. Max, tell me what you do at National Pension Partners.
Well, Nick, we help successful small businesses and professionals put together retirement plans that provide them the maximum retirement benefits and big tax deductions at the same time.
Well, how do you do this?
Well, we get on an internet conferencing system with the client. We review their goals, what they want to accomplish, and then put together strategies to help them in implementing a retirement plan that benefits them, not everybody else.
Well, that sounds really good, but how much does this cost?
Well, it's really not bad because the first consultation is free. That allows us to go through and discover whether this strategy works for that business and for you as the business owner, and helping you maximize your retirement.
Well, Max, how do we get this free appointment?
It's really pretty simple, Nick. You can either go to our website below or call us at 877-252-1692, and then we can set up a time with either myself, Nick, or one of our other retirement plan specialists, another CPA or advisor in the office, to go over this with you and make sure it fits for you.
Hi, my name is Lewis Haupt. I work with National Pension Partners, and I work with businesses to allow them to put the maximum away that they can for themselves and to save taxes.
Hi, I'm Brad Coyle, and I'm the brokerage manager at National Pension Partners. We're always analyzing plan fund choices in order to ensure the participant's success.
If you want more information on how we can help you and your business put more money away in a retirement plan than you ever thought possible, contact us at the website below or call us at 877-252.
Okay, we're back. So what to do, we basically the same for a year and a half now. One, whatever allocation you have in stocks should be in growth stocks, dividend growth stocks, and dividend stocks. Why? This is the most obvious chart in the world. So if you look, $100 put into the S&P 500 grew to an impressive $4,000 over 50 years from 2073 to 2022. Okay, great. Except for if you were in dividend payers, you would have earned over 8,000, more than double. And if you were in dividend growers and initiators, you would have earned over 13,000. So you're talking about double and triple the return. What allocations you have in stocks, it all depends on your age, your financial situation, but that's number one. Number two, you should own energy and pipelines, in my opinion, without a doubt. That's by far our biggest allocation, about 27% to energy right today or somewhere in there. But pipelines especially, and we're going to cover a pipeline in a minute, energy is the only place in my mind to get really safe long-term yields. It's not 100% safe. And number three, be defensive, because the market, I think, is delusional and it's going to get hit sooner or later with reality. If they get some rate increases now, or rates don't go down, or or the interest rates eventually start hitting companies sooner or later, I don't see the market going up a whole lot. I don't see the great news. Maybe something will turn, hopefully. Dividend Stock of the Week is actually a partnership. Disclaimer, the show is for only entertainment. There's never a guarantee on any investments. Nobody can guarantee anything almost except for a CD, and even that's not a guarantee against inflation. Consult your financial advisor. So this is MPLX. I've recommended this for a year and a half since we've been doing the show. It went from about 23 to 35. It's my largest allocation. I have complicated positions, but with options and things, but at least 15%, really more exposure. What do I like about it? One, it's a pipeline, so it's really demand driven rather than supply and cost. So a lot of these are long-term contracts, fees, and also you get a nice return, which is often generally tax-free for a long time. You get depreciation, depletion, and return of capital. You have to be a little careful in an IRA about UBTI. You'll have to look it up. But what else do I like? It's an 8.9% yield. The price to cash flow is 7. So really the company is earning 14.3% cash flow yield. 14% cash flow yields is really nice. They can reinvest. They can do all kinds of things with the money, increase dividends. I wouldn't be surprised. I expect a dividend increase in November, and I think it's going to be substantial. So the other thing is that 14% they're earning is counting the fact that they're putting all kind of money into new projects. So they could stop putting the money into new projects and just run what they have, the pipelines, but those new projects will create growth. What kind of growth? So if you look at the earnings per share, according to TD Ameritrade, for the last 5 years, annualized, you're looking at 28% growth in their earnings per share annualized. And the dividend grew 5.5% per year annualized for the last 5 years. So if you're starting at 9 and it increases at 5, that's a pretty good cash flow, and the price of the stock should go with it. Finally, I like companies where I see certain investors like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley in there with decent amounts of money. Now, they're very diversified, so it's not a large percentage of their portfolio, but it's still real money to them. Goldman Sachs put $447 million into MPLX. Morgan Stanley, $188 million. JP Morgan, $153 million. These aren't huge sums to them. I know it sounds like a lot. They're big companies, but they're still decent bets, or pretty big bets. It's probably Goldman's one of their larger energy bets. It's in the top X number anyway. So overall, MPLX, love it. I really like energy, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a nice increase into the winter. I wouldn't be surprised at all, which would be nice for cash flow on that already almost 9% yield. So panel discussion of the week. The question is, why is the House investigating Joe Biden and family? The White House, by the way, had the nerve to say, why are they doing that? There is no evidence. And also, why do 38% of Americans, and this to me is the more interesting question in a way, 38% of Americans don't believe that Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's business dealings. Now, on one side, 61% of U.S. adults, according to a CNN, by the way, 61% believe he was involved in Hunter Biden's business dealings. A little more background, and then we'll get into discussion. One, Biden has repeatedly claimed for years that he never, quote, never spoke with son Hunter Biden or brother James Biden about foreign ventures, but witness statements and records from Hunter's abandoned laptop and other sources show otherwise. By the way, if you took any one of these pieces of evidence, you'd say, well, he's probably involved very deeply. But when you combine what I'm about to say, you say, how can you imagine there's so much smoke? It's like a forest fire of smoke. Again, it's not just, it's complicated, but I'll explain why this isn't necessarily even good for the Democratic Party. So, number two, the Biden family has set up 20 shell companies, which have taken in over $20 million. Who happens to set up 20 shell companies and mysteriously takes in $20 million? Number three, Hunter Biden's partner has said Hunter has complained about giving 10% to, quote, the big guy. I wonder who he's giving the 10% to. Number four, Hunter Biden complained in an email to his sister years before that about having to cover expenses for Joe Biden. He's been paying for his house, expenses, things like that. Number five, President Biden has sent over 5,000 emails using pseudonyms, under 3 different pseudonyms. Who sends 5,000 emails using fake names? That's a little suspicious in itself. And most damning, because this alone convinced me years ago, but keep all that rest of that in the evidence. Joe Biden bragged on national TV just a few years ago that he had the key prosecutor in Ukraine fired. And he said, I had him fired. I said, if you don't fire him right away, we're going to not guarantee $1 billion in U.S. loans. Now, a few points. One, the prosecutor was pursuing Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. Hunter is on the board of Burisma, and he's received about $11 million, $1 million maybe in pay, and $10 million in legal fees. Now, Hunter Biden has no knowledge of the energy industry whatsoever, and he also doesn't speak Ukrainian. So why would you pay $1 to somebody, not to mention $11 million? And by the way, Burisma executives have said they paid $10 million particularly for influence with President Biden. Finally, a few points there again. So the State Department and other U.S. government agencies, there's no evidence at all. They say they did not recommend the prosecutor being fired. Again, this prosecutor was aggressively pursuing Burisma, the oil company. So where in the world did Biden get the idea? I need to jump into a Ukrainian situation and get this one prosecutor in Ukraine fired. And by the way, I received $11 million. Nothing suspicious there at all. Oops. So back to the question. Now we know why the House at least wants to investigate it. I think I answered, but especially why does 38% of Americans disagree with the 64% of Americans that know that this happened? Because to me, it's like 99.99999%. I mean, again, I'm not all in on Biden. I mean, I look at the policies. I have problems with everybody on certain issues, but this is pretty obvious. Nick, what do you think?
Politically motivated, and I'm against it. I was actually against the Trump, if you recall his 2 impeachments. I was totally against both those two. But here's the reason why. It's the same reason why we have why the thing is you cannot sue the state. In other words, they have diplomatic immunity and presidential immunity. Unless it's something that is really a smoking gun, we shouldn't get involved in that. So here's the reason I was against the Trump impeachments, both of them, is it dilutes the value of an impeachment, period.
Well, I agree with you.
In other words, and what he was being impeached for was not, he didn't shoot anybody, he didn't kill anybody. And so what happens, any ticky-tack thing can become an impeachment. Look, if you want to go after him after he's out of the presidency, go right ahead. But right now he has a job to do. Same with, and America has a lot of problems that he needs to address. Here's number one. Our national debt's $31 trillion.
True.
David Walker said
much more.
It's much more than that. And not only that, he goes, in the future, our biggest budget item will just be paying interest on the national debt. We are sinking fast.
Yeah, you know, I have to jump in here because you've already said three things. I'm going to lose track. Number one, my theory is we won't pay interest on the debt because we're going to drive interest rates down to zero. You know, that's, well, they'll have to do it. Exactly. That's why. But that's going to affect a lot of people financially. So you're going to get hurt by that debt. Number two, I totally agree with, and then if you want to go on, fine. The Trump things, and I want to point out, the first, it dilutes the impeachment. And even then the Republicans said, you know what, you're diluting impeachment. But the thing was, ironically, I wasn't going to mention this, but the first impeachment was over, or the second, I can't remember which one. I think the second was about the fact that Trump actually said, maybe we should investigate Biden for what we're talking about. It was the most obvious thing in the world to at least say, but oh no, you can't even ask the question, you know, but it's the president's job to look into corruption. So it's so ridiculous. You know, it's outrageous in terms of, but you're right. Now impeachment
you have to stay focused on the problem, and this is a distraction. Here's another problem. Social Security and Medicare going broke in a decade. We will live through most of the people are listening will see Social Security and Medicare go bankrupt.
You know what? I want to divert from that because let's do that on next show, actually, if you want to go back to that.
Saying, these are important.
That's a complicated issue.
You're going to deal with some crazy.
No, it's not just that. There's all kind of problems. There's crime. There's an open border. But the point is, let me make one other point. Wait. Let me make one other point about what you said. They're not going to impeach. They're not actually impeaching him. This is an impeachment inquiry. Let me explain why. Because what's been happening is the FBI, the Justice Department, have been stonewalling. They're hiding all the evidence, which is why the White House said, well, you can't find evidence. You can find evidence on Hunter, but you can't find it on Biden. But what happens is the House asks for evidence, and they give them sheets of blacked out material. Or they say, well, we can't give you that. It's executive privilege. So they can't get the evidence. But when they're doing an impeachment inquiry, they have now a much stronger subpoena power. So that's why they're doing it. So it'll never come to impeachment. First of all, the Senate's not going to vote for it. But what they are going to do is get the evidence because that's going to influence politics. So a few points. Because we're running out of time, as always. Number one, 38% have no knowledge of this because their heads are in the sand. And it's not personally them. It's because they get their news from the sources that agree with their political positions. And it's really the news fault because the liberal media, and I have problems with the conservative media because they're slanted, but the liberal media just totally slants things. They refuse to even mention stories that are major news. And so people who don't know, I have friends who are so intelligent, they don't have a clue about what's happening if it's a story that the media doesn't want them to know. The other thing is that they're not necessarily helping the Democrat Party. They might think they are, but they're really hurting themselves because Joe Biden is by far the most likely nominee right now for the Democratic Party. According to a poll I picked out, he has a 71% chance of being the Democratic nominee as of today. Newsom, 16, Robert Kennedy, 12, Kamala Harris, 6.7, and Hillary Clinton at 2.2%. So first of all, I'm not sure any of these are great Democratic candidates. They will certainly have issues of all kinds. You could do a whole show on their issues from, Kennedy's issues, Newsom's California issues, San Francisco's falling apart. But the point is, if they weren't doing this for the last year or two, more candidates better candidates would have emerged, and even these candidates would probably be doing much better. It still may not be Biden. I can't wait to see a debate between anybody if it's a Biden and Biden, because the problem is, how is he going to defend this $20 million, by the way, which a lot of it came from China and Russia. This is a very difficult situation. The media is at fault. That's why you should watch Wall Street Hackers. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we're out of time. And we try to look at both sides of all stories, although this one's tough for Biden. As Kim always says, get healthy, get wealthy, and we'll see you next week on Thursday and Saturday, depending on what distribution channel. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, audience.
Right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.